Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantastahi Abhadrani Vidunoti Surtsatam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Reading from Canto 4, Chapter 9, Text 15. Tvam Nityamukta Parishuddha Vibuddha Atma Utastadi Purusho Bhagavam Trayadishaha Yad Buddhyavasthitim Akanditaya Swadrishtya Drishtastita Abhimako Vyatiriktase. Synonyms: Tvam, you, Nitya, eternally, Mukta, liberated, Parishuddha, uncontaminated, Vibuddha, full of knowledge, Atma, the supreme soul, Kutastha, changeless, Adi, original, Purusha, persons, Bhagavan, the Lord, full of six opulences, three Adishaha, master of the three modes, Yat, whence, Buddhi, of intellectual activities, Avasthitim, all stages, Akhanditaya, unbroken, Swadrishtya, by transcendental vision, Drishta, you witness, Sthita, for maintaining the universe, Abhimakaha, enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices, Vyatiriktaha, differently, Ase, you are situated. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. My Lord, by your unbroken transcendental glance, you are the supreme witness of all stages of intellectual activities. You are eternally liberated. Your existence is situated in pure goodness, and you are existent in the super soul without change. You are the original personality of Godhead, full with six opulences, and you are eternally the master of the three modes of material nature. Thus, you are always different from the ordinary living entities. As Lord Vishnu, you maintain all affairs of the entire universe, and you stand aloof and are the enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices. Purport. An atheistic argument against the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead states that if God, the Supreme Person, appears and disappears and sleeps and awakens, then what is the difference between God and living entity? Dhruva Maharaj is carefully distinguishing the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from that of all living entities. He points out the following differences. Lord is eternally liberated. Whenever he appears, even within this material world, he is never entangled by the three modes of material nature. He is therefore known as Trayadisha, the master of the three modes of material nature. In Bhagavad Gita 7:14, it is said that Devi hi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. The living entities are entangled in the three modes of material nature. The external energy of the Lord is very strong, but the Lord, as the master of the three modes of material nature, is ever liberated from the action and reactions of those modes. He, therefore, uncontaminated, as stated in the Ishopanishad. The contamination of the material world does not affect the Supreme Godhead. Krishna, therefore, says in Bhagavad Gita that those who are rascals and fools think of him as an ordinary human being. not knowing his Param Bhavam. Param Bhavam refers to his being always transcendentally situated. Material contamination cannot affect him. Another difference between the Lord and the living entity is that living entity is always in darkness, even though he may be situated in the modes of goodness. There are still so many things which are unknown to him. But it is not the same for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knows past, present, and future of everything that is happening, everyone's heart. Bhagavad Gita confirms this. Vedaham samati thani. Lord is not part of the soul. He is unchangeable supreme soul. And the living entities are his parts and parcels. The living entity is forced to appear in this material world under the direction of Deva Maya. But when the Lord appears, he comes by his own internal potency, Atma Maya. Besides that, a living entity is within the time of past, present, and future. His life has a beginning, a birth, and in the conditioned state, his life ends with death. But the Lord, Adi Purusha, the original person, in Brahma Samhita, the Lord Brahma offers his respect to the Adi Purusha Govinda, the original person, who has no beginning, whereas the creation of this material world has a beginning. Vedanta says, Janmadhyasya yatha, everything is born from the Supreme, but the Supreme has no birth. He has all six opulences in full and beyond comparison. He is the master of material nature. His intelligence is not broken under any circumstances. He stands aloof, although he is the maintainer of the whole creation. As stated in the Vedas, Katha Upanishad 2:13, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. The Lord is the supreme maintainer. The living entities are meant to serve him by offering sacrifices, for he is the rightful enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices. Therefore, everyone should engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord with his life, his riches, his intelligence, and his words. This is the original constitutional position of the living entities. One should never compare the sleeping of an ordinary living entity to the sleeping of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the causal ocean. There is no stage at which the living entity can compare to the Supreme Person. The Mayavadi philosopher, being unable to adjust to all this, come to the conclusion of impersonalism or voidism. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I humbly seek the blessings of all assembled Vaishnavas. Please forgive me any misinterpretation. So Dhruva Maharaj, who was a 5-year-old boy, and he wanted to offer his prayers to the Supreme Lord when the Lord appeared before him. But he did not know how to offer prayers. Lord, knowing his position, touched his forehead with conch shell. And Dhruva Maharaj was in full knowledge and he was able to offer prayers. So he is offering prayers to the Lord. And in the today's verse, it says, by your unbroken transcendental glance, you are the supreme witness of all stages of intellectual activities. So Lord is constantly observing everything. He's conscious of the entire creation. It is said in the scriptures that the sun and the moon are the eyes of the Supreme Lord, Shashi Surya. So he is observing externally through sun and the moon. And Lord is situated in the heart of all living entities as Paramatma, and is observing from within as Paramatma. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Upadrishta Anumanta cha Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara Paramatmeti chapi ukto Dehe Asmin Purusha Para. In the Deha, in the body of the living entities, that Supreme Personality of Godhead is present as Paramatma, Super Soul. And he is Upadrishta, he is overseeing everything. Anumanta is a permitter. Without his permission, without his sanction, we cannot do any activities. And he is the maintainer, Bharta, and Bhokta, he is the supreme enjoyer. And Maheshwara is the supreme controller. So he is present within the living entity and is overseeing, maintaining, and permitted. All these activities he's doing within. Not only that, Lord is present each and every atom as Paramatma. In Brahma Samhita, it is said, Andantarastu Paramanu Chayantarastham Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. He is present in each and Paramanu, atom, as Paramatma. So he is directly or indirectly conscious of the entire creation. So otherwise, how could Lord come from the pillar to kill Hiranyakashipu? So he is present in the entire creation. Now, next Dhruva Maharaj says that Lord is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. We, the living beings, we are conditioned by these three modes of material nature, and we are bound up. Someone is bound up by the mode of goodness, by the activities in mode of goodness. Somebody is bound up by the modes of passion, or somebody is bound up by the mode of ignorance. In this way, we are conditioned. But Supreme Lord is transcendental to these three modes of material nature. He is the Triyadisha, he is the master of these three modes of material nature. Just like a kingdom, a king is the supreme authority. He makes the law in the kingdom. But if the king breaks some law, the king is not going to go to prison. He is above the law. Similarly, Lord is above the three modes of material nature. Sometimes it appears, currently it appears that Lord is for acting against the moral code of conduct. For example, when Lord was in Mathura, Jarasandha attacked 17 times. Each time Jarasandha was defeated, his army was killed. He will go back and bring another big army. In this way, 17 times he was defeated. On the 18th time, Lord ran away from the battlefield. So if someone runs away from the battlefield, he will be condemned. Not only in those times, even the modern times also, if a soldier runs away from the battlefield out of fear, whatever, then he will be court-martialed. So Lord ran away from the battlefield, which is not glorious. But Lord is glorified as Ranachor. He is worshipped as Ranachor. Similarly, when Lord came as Lord Ramchandra, he killed Vali. He was hiding behind a tree, and Vali and Sugriva were fighting. At an appropriate time, Lord shot an arrow and killed Vali, like a hunter. Hunter, he hides behind a tree or a bush and waits for an unsuspecting animal to approach and kills. So Lord Ramchandra followed the dharma or a principle of a hunter. But Lord Ramchandra is not condemned. He is glorified. So Lord's activities, even though it appears as against the moral code of conduct, but he is always in pure goodness. He is not uh, condemned for this. In Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami says, after explaining all the rasa dance, he says, Dharma vyatikramo drishta Ishwaranam cha sasam tejyasam na doshaya vahane sarvabhujoyata. Like Lord's actions, like the rasa dance also, it appears apparently as against the moral code of conduct. But Sukadeva Goswami says, even though it appears as against the religious principles, Lord has no fault, or Lord never gets contaminated. And he gives the example of a fire. Fire, you throw anything, any impure things, it burns into ashes and it purifies. And the fire itself never gets contaminated. So, Sukadeva Goswami says, therefore, one should not try to imitate Lord. Now, there are some sects like Sajiyas, they try to imitate the rasa dance. Sukadeva Goswami warns that one should not try to imitate the Lord's activities. One should follow Lord's instructions. If somebody tries to follow the activities of the Lord, then they will fall down. And Sukadeva Goswami gives the example of Lord Shiva, Lord Shiva's followers. Lord Shiva's followers, they smear their body with ashes and with matted hair. Sometimes they live in the graveyard. In this way, they try to imitate Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva, to save this universe, he drank poison. And if the followers try to follow that, they will die. So that's why Sukadeva Goswami says we should not try to follow the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, we have to follow his instructions. And if the Lord's instructions and the Lord's actions are matching, then it is very glorious. One should immediately accept it and try to follow it. So this is the instruction of Sukadeva Goswami. So here Dhruva Maharaj praising that Lord Vishnu, you maintain all the affairs of the entire universe, and yet you stand aloof and are the enjoyer of the results of all sacrifice. Lord is Bhoktaram Yajnatapasam. He is the supreme enjoyer, the supreme maintainer of this whole creation. I'll stop here. Thank you for